Hey, it's Intuitive Deborah of intuitivedeborah.me, and this is a video I decided to do because I have a lot of people who ask me, well, what are the Akashic Records, and how is it possible to access them, and how do you work? How do you teach people how to do the Akashics? I do more of not teaching the Akashics, but my session is usually about getting an Akashic attunement. Okay, so if you've ever heard of Reiki attunement, this is an Akashic attunement. And so I figured I'd dive into what the records are, how you can get into your own records, how you can start trying to get into other people's records like family, friends, or if you're wanting to build your own practice. So let's start with what are the Akashic Records. So of course, one of the most famous Akashic readers was Edgar Cayce. I absolutely love him. He was definitely a pioneer. So you'll see me looking at my notes a lot because I don't want to forget anything, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to consider the Akashic Records as a zip file or as a file in a computer, right? You can also consider, if you're old school like me, you consider it as a traditional library. When I see it as a Grecian Roman temple, you know, or one of the Grecian Roman libraries back in the day. So everybody can look at it in different ways, different formats, whatever works for you. So basically it is really a file on, and there's many different Akashics. There's not just your personal, there's Akashics of Earth. I mean, there's Akashics of the universe. There's so many different Akashics, but right now we're going to concentrate just on yours or your clients, okay? So this zip file contains all the lifetimes that you have led from the beginning of time, all the beings that you have been, whether it's star seeds or it's crystalline beings and or any past lives here on earth. It contains all the things that you felt, you saw, you heard, and it also contains your spirit guides, your ascended masters that you work with, which are your master teachers, your loved ones who've crossed over, archangels that you've worked with. So it's just so many different things, and that's why it could be a little overwhelming when you want to go into working with Akashic Records, but you just have to start simple. That's the easiest way. And also sometimes you will see glimpses of your future, and usually the only reason why you may see glimpses of future lives or future events, which is not often, it is because somehow it works as a healing for you now, okay? So it is possible to see future aspects of yourself, which I have, future moments, which I've also seen. It's not often, but it does happen. And like I said, it's more about for a healing element than, you know, being cool and trying to look into the future. So the Akashics, it also stands for, it's good to know what it means, and it's a Sanskrit word for primary substance, right? Which is what we all are. We are basically all have light of the universe inside of us, and so that's basically what the Akashics is. It's that nodule of when we first started, that spark, okay, of universal energies. And so I start my students with the fifth dimensional Akashics, just to start off easy. And I know fifth dimension, and I work with Archangel Metatron and his retreat in Luxor. That's where that's my jumping point for my students, my clients. Okay, so reading your personal Akashics is what everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know, how can I read my Akashics? What are some tips? Okay, so the Akashics is basically, right, the journey of your soul from inception, when you weren't even in a physical body. Okay, and so everybody is taught differently. Everybody does Akashics differently. The way that I was taught was for you to get into a relaxed state, right? It's very similar to meditation, only when you start. Once you are already doing this, it doesn't matter. You can go into the Akashics no matter what, and you will not get distracted, okay? But when you first start out, it really is important to do it very similar to when you are going to do a visualization or a meditation, okay? So you want to be comfortable. First of all, you want to wear comfortable clothes. You don't want to be distracted. You also want to just put yourself in a relaxed state of mind. Sometimes what happens, you want to read the Akashics so bad that you get yourself worked up, you know? And so it's definitely important to kind of just bring it down. If you want to play music, you can, but you don't want to fall asleep. So this is something I would definitely do sitting up, because eventually the way that you want to do it is the way that I was taught, which was to keep your eyes open and look to the left, where you access that side of your brain that is known as the visual construction, where you can visually construct things. And to me, this is a great way to kind of get into the fourth and the fifth dimension, which is where your mindset needs to go if you start reading the Akashic Records, okay? So it may be easier to start out closing your eyes, but eventually the goal is to do it with your eyes open, because it's kind of, you know, when you're reading your client live, if this becomes part of your practice, you don't want to close your eyes, you know. So eventually that is the goal. So whatever works for you in the beginning, and then you kind of just take it from there. So, one of the other things that's really important when you first start reading Akashic Records, whether it's for yourself or somebody else, is to have something that gives you a focus. And a lot of times, people will start off with a prayer. You can make up your own prayer, or you could do what I did, which was to go on the internet and find a couple of, so for examples, I picked two that I just typed in Akashic prayer. And these are two that I found, and they're just, you can find them very easily. So I'm going to read the first one to you, and it says, I acknowledge the eternal forces of light, asking for the guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth as it is revealed for our highest good and everyone connected to us. So that's one small prayer. And then you can say, the next step is, because it's 2 parts, and some of these prayers are 3 parts. And sometimes there's a closing prayer. So there's an opening prayer, and sometimes you want to seal it. You want to close it with an ending prayer. And that's not, everybody's different. So that may be a little too much for you, or that might be something that works for you when you first start out. So when you are reading so let's say you're reading for me. So the prayer begins, help me to know, and you need to know your client's full name in the beginning. So mine is Deborah Christine Bowen. So help me to know. So if you were the person reading me, help me to know Deborah Christine Bowen in the light of the Akashic Records. To see Deborah Christine Bowen through the eyes of the Lords of the Akashic Records, enable me to share the wisdom, compassion, and insights that the masters, teachers, healers, and loved ones of Deborah Christine Bowen have for her. So that's one prayer that you can use. Okay, so the other prayer is, I ask my guides, teachers, loved ones, angels to help me to enter the Akashic Records to see myself in wholeness. So this would be if it's for you. I pray that my ego is kept out of the way, and I am given the wisdom I need to see myself through the light of God. The records are now open. And I have a prayer that I give my students. And once when you have a session with me, I have another prayer that I kind of put together that seems to work the best so far for me. So, and you'll definitely get that when you get your session with me. So, and during my session, I start off with using the Kuan Yin Lotus Reiki, okay? I send 3 waves of energy, and each wave of energy I send with a personalized light language that allows us to get onto the same frequency. So we're basically on the same page, okay? So that I raise the student up to the level of where I'm at. And what that teaches your vibration is where it needs to, it gives it the template of where it needs to go when it needs to go into the Akashic Records. So that's basically where the attunement starts to come in, okay? So that's where the Akashic attunement really kind of starts to come in. And then we ask your team, how is it that is your best way to get into the Akashic Records? Because everybody is different. So it could be that it's clairaudiently. It could be, that you hear things, you hear messages. It could be visually that you see things. And it may be that you get a combination of your psychic abilities working to access the Akashic Records. So I go in and I find what that combination is so that you can access it every time. And what I do is I take you there. I take you to the records. And sometimes, like I said, people see a Grecian temple, a real library. Sometimes for people, it's like a sci-fi movie, and in front of them is a holographic screen, and they're able to just tap and move things around. So it really is not, I find that what I see is that a lot of the Akashics are taught in a cookie cutter fashion where it's the same for everybody. But the Akashics are like a thumbprint, okay? It is unique. Everybody has a unique way of accessing the records. And that's where I feel like a lot of teachers may fall off a little bit, but I make sure that that person finds their way of getting into the Akashics. And then what I try to do, if we have time, is to do 1 or 2 exercises where they can, I can ask questions and they can try to retrieve the information. And therefore, that's where the attunement comes in, and they can learn how they get into the Akasha or the Akashics. Okay, so hopefully that is a bit of a brief explanation of how I see the Akashic Records work. And so hopefully you found this of value. And in the description below, I will leave my information, how you can contact me. And so you can go to intuitivedeborah.me, not .com, intuitivedeborah.me, and you can check out my website. And you can take it from there. Hopefully you see something you like. So anyway, Intuitive Deborah here, and I hope that you were able to get a little bit of information and it's helpful to you. Bye.